Well, welcome to the Social Shift podcast for today, and I'm very pleased to have the incredible Kirsti Key with me. The Social Shift podcast series is all about making change together and learning things about our community that we may not necessarily know. And today we're going to be focusing on how people in the latter part of their working life, and they might be transitioning into wanting to retire, but also remain really connected in the community. What's available for them? What's important to them? How they can contribute to the community, as well as have that great balance in their life of doing other things as well. So I guess, Kirsti, you could maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing and all the amazing projects that you're involved in.
Yeah, well, I suppose I'm very involved in the community. And have been since I retired about 12 or 13 years ago. And right now I have limited myself, that's the way to put it, to three things, because I think it's important not to spread yourself too thinly. So I'm involved at the moment in the Hervey Bay Neighbourhood Centre, and that gives me an opportunity to pick and choose projects that I'm really interested in. I'm also the chairperson of the Fraser Coast Anglican College, and that allows me to maintain my interest in education because education was my field.
Right, excellent. Okay.
And then as well as that, I am currently the president of Rotary Hervey Bay Sunrise. We're a breakfast club, and I suppose that's where I get my social interaction with a range of very different people, but it's also an opportunity to undertake projects within the community.
So that sounds to me like you have a reasonably full dance card, even though you're not working full time anymore, because I would think of those organisations like Rotary, FCAC in particular, and also the Neighbourhood Centre, which is really quite a diverse and large organisation in its own right. You're holding very senior positions in those. So you have an expectation, I would imagine, that you place on yourself, coming from quite a professional background in your time working life, to do those jobs to a high standard. How do you manage all of that, but then have that time for yourself where you don't feel like you've got the weight of the world on your shoulders and you want to enjoy the labours of not being in full-time work anymore?
Malcolm, I was probably very, very fortunate because I retired when I turned 55.
Okay.
And so I was still very interested in a range of things. And so I almost went from my retired working life, and I did still do some contract work and different things like that for maybe 2 or 3 years after I retired. But I moved straight from the working world into a volunteer world, and I felt very strongly about the need to give back to the community.
Right. Yes.
I mean, I'd had a very full working life and a very fulfilling working life, and I just felt that now that I had the opportunity, I could give back to the community, and so I did that. And over the years, I've been able to structure myself, if you like, out of some of those things or wind down. And in particular with the Neighbourhood Centre, one of the things that I will often say is that I'm very happy to come along and I'm very happy to talk and share all my information and knowledge, but I don't want homework. So,
I finished school at the end of grade 10, so I can tell you that I wasn't very fond of homework either. So people who might be watching this and in a similar situation, perhaps I would say statistically a little bit older when they're finishing work, that they have perhaps always had a desire to contribute back to the community. But when you're in the grind of family and paying off homes and all the rest of it, and you're either working your own business, which is 24/7 anyway, or you're striving to do the best for an employer, you sometimes just don't feel like physically, mentally, you have the time for that. But when you finish full-time work, you might. How can they engage in that? Where can they find that opportunity, that fulfillment for themselves? What are the avenues, do you think, that are best for them?
So the important thing is to understand what you want to give back to. And I think that a lot of people are very happy continuing and volunteering and working with the community in the field in which they have always worked, because it's where they feel comfortable.
Understand.
But I also think that there are some people who, for their entire working life, have never really had an opportunity to try something different. And retirement is sometimes an opportunity find something different, try something.
Yeah.
And I think that we're, a small community like ours is good because word of mouth is a great way to find out, what's going on and what sort of things are happening around the place. And then it's just a matter of having the confidence to be able to go along and sometimes walk into a room where you know no one, but at least walk in and say, hi, this is who I am.
Yes.
And, and I'm just trying you guys out
Sure.
to see if it's what I want to do.
I understand what you mean. I'm an incredibly shy person. Which is the irony is I do a lot of events, but I would never go into a room of people that I don't know and go and introduce myself. That would be a personal nightmare for me. But I can see how you really need to do that if you want to engage in things like that. And it's really interesting, I think, what you talked about Hervey Bay and the style of the community here. So in Queensland, the median age is 38, and nationally it's 37, and Hervey Bay it's 55. And that's not going to change. As Hervey Bay grows, the population base that was still here is going to remain here. And that means that we're still going to need a lot more people to engage in community organisations as the city continues to boom. That leads me to thinking about how to impart knowledge in an intergenerational way and how you can be able to pass on all of the things that you've learned to the next generation. And with your background in education, how do you see that best being done without doing it in a way that you feel like you're telling the younger generation what to do?
And I suppose it's around that traditional mentoring type role, and it's about how you become a good mentor, because all of us, when we retire, have had a long history working our way through the workforce and working our way, maybe climbing a career ladder, maybe gaining knowledge about the area that we know and understand. But I think it's then around just working with the people who are currently doing those roles. And as we will move out of a role, somebody has to come in and fill that space. And so it's around just understanding that they're probably just as keen to know and learn the things that we are keen to pass on. And I suppose then just developing a style that allows you to work with people. And it was only fairly recently, actually, that one of the girls that I work with sort of looked at me and she said, Kirsti, I want to do what you're doing, but only in 40 years' time. And I thought, okay, and that's how it is. And so then it's just helping them understand that it's a possible way to go.
Do you think that how vital that is to make sure that you don't fall into the trap of isolation when you finish work? And I think that as in days gone by, when people finished work, they did so maybe much older or not as healthy as what they are today, because we're all living longer and generally trying to take better care of ourselves, perhaps than our parents and our grandparents did. How important is that to make sure that the strategies that you have in place don't just leave you and your wife at home together all day, staring at each other with nothing else to do?
I think that's really important. And it's around finding something, like if you're a couple, I think it's around finding the things that you can do together, but it's also around finding the things that you can do separately. Because the important thing is that when you do come back together, in the evening for an evening meal, maybe it's lunchtime or whatever, you have got things to talk about and things to share with each other around what else is going on in the community. And the only way you can do that, I think, is to get out into and experience what we've got to offer.
Do you find from time to time that there might be misconceptions about people who are getting into the third period of their life? And I know for myself, I'm in my early 50s. So now I feel like in another 5 or 6 years, I'll be transitioning into a different life where my kids have finished schooling and they probably all moved on. Do you think that there's misconceptions in the community about how much people who have all of that experience can continue to offer? Do you ever see situations where seniors are looked at as, well, you've done your bit now, the rest of us will take it from here?
I think that does exist. I don't know that I've necessarily experienced it. And again, I think it could well be the way in which you approach life. And, I'm happy to go out and talk about what I've done and different things. This is how I did it, but, maybe somebody else is going to do it differently. But I think there are misconceptions. And sometimes it's misconceptions on the older people and the people who have retired, in that they thought that they retired, they were going to have a life where they could maybe walk on the beach, play with the dog, read a book. But you can only do so much of that. And I think that we soon discover that it's human contact and interaction with other people that is what gives us a bit of a thing for life.
Sure.
And one of the things I think is important is even just those little neighbourhood.
Yes.
So having a chat to the person next door who's hanging out there washing or something like that. And sometimes that then leads you to discover other things that are going on in the community, things that you may not have known about. And then you might have somebody that you could say, can I come with you? Because then I don't have to go into a room by myself.
Sure. I think of a situation where I came and spoke at Rotary here, and I think it might have been even up to maybe a year ago. And I was not really sure what I'd be walking into. I get to, fortunately get to speak at lots of different events and conferences and things like that. And I have to say that it was one of the best mornings that I'd had in a long time. I went back home and I said to my wife, well, what an amazing bunch of people. And of course, you diligently followed me up to make sure that I would continue to be involved in Rotary and all the rest of it. And, I just was really in awe of the enthusiasm of the people who came along and how welcoming they were. And I almost felt to myself that it was of a different era, and it was really hard for me to put that into a box. But if you go into a room somewhere now and it's a group of people who might be in their 30s or 40s, whatever the case may be, I don't feel like they're all going to come up and shake my hand and say hello and introduce themselves, but that was the case here, and I really enjoyed it. So if we can maybe just talk a little bit about Rotary as an organisation, and whether that's a great runway or pipeline for people to start volunteering when they have finished their working life.
Rotary and service clubs like that is a great way to start volunteering, because there's such a range of things that you can do. So there are people who, when they do want to just volunteer, all they want to do is go along the sausage or go along and set up the tables, sort of something like that. And so there's something that you can do that it's not necessarily, using your brain or making you focus strongly or whatever. So you can start from there. But then invariably, those organisations, got local projects that we do where you can go along. So, for instance, Rotary Sunrise, we worked very closely with the hospice when they were building the hospice.
Right.
And so there was there was like landscaping work and that sort of thing. But then there was also setting up rooms, and, we sponsored the Sunrise room there, which is like a family room for the people who are there. So, you can sort of do those types of things, physical type work. But then we also get involved in national projects. So, for instance, Rotary International has projects around the world, and there's an opportunity for you to be able to volunteer and, go on different projects. So those sorts of activities, I think, are a great way for you to be able to stay connected with the community and just work out at what level you want to be involved. As because negotiating retirement is a bit of a challenge. You have a perception about what it's going to be, but it may not necessarily be that. And so, you don't want to sort of throw yourself in boots and all until you can try and work out exactly what's available and how you might contribute. And I think that a service club like Rotary is a great way to do that.
It's super interesting that you say that. I look at observations of people in all walks of life, and I look at, say, high wealth individuals who are still achieving and driving their businesses into their late 70s, and I guess that brings them purpose. And I think that's something that's really important to all of us. What's going to bring us some purpose? Shifting gears a little bit, let's. What about how you look after yourself as you get a little bit older, and exercise and all of the things that I think you in some way might have the opportunity to be more focused on when you're not raising a family, coming to work 9 to 5 and, rushing to get dinner on the table and the rest of it. What are some, because you're still really busy. Well, you sound really busy to me. You don't sound like you're retired at all. But how do you stay on how do you look after yourself as a part of that process?
Look, you do need me time. You definitely do. But I think too, when you retire, you're able to continue some of the things that you were doing before you retired, and then you're able to grow those if they're sort of areas that you want to grow. So, for instance, I've always walked on the beach. And when I first moved to Hervey Bay and I went to the real estate agent and said, I want to buy a house, and they said, well, what are your parameters? And I said, I've got to be able to walk to the beach. I can't be able to have to drive a car and to walk to the beach. So walking has always been something that, that I've been interested in. And when wasn't my 60th birthday, but the year I turned 60, we had a school reunion. And a number of the girls in my year said, what are we going to do? We're all turned 60 this year, we've got to do something. And, we had a couple of lines and talked about it and nothing happened. And about a month later, an email came through from one of the girls saying, hi, I've decided I'm across England when I'm, this year. Right. Because I'm 60. Who else is coming?
Okay.
And so it ended up that there were 12 of us that said, yes, we were interested. In the end, 8 of us walked across. We did the Wainwright Walk in the UK. But it was an opportunity because most of us were retired by that stage. And we went on training.
I was going to say, give me a scope of how far that is.
So it was 296 miles. In the UK, everything's measured in.
Okay. Right. That's 400 and something kilometres.
Exactly. A 14-day walk.
Every day?
We had 2 rest days, but every other day, we walked. And some days it was 18 to 20 miles.
Yep.
Some days it was 10 miles.
Okay.
But it was a challenge, and it was a challenge mentally.
Yes.
As well as a challenge physically. But girls that I had, sort of kept in contact with, but not closely, we've now formed a really close group. And every 2 years we go off on, we've done some very big walks. We did a Camino at one stage.
Okay.
But we're now at the stage where we like to stay in the one place for 3 or 4 nights, and we'll just do day walks.
I understand.
Out from there. So that's something that I just built on from a personal love that I've had, all the time. And then the other thing I've done is riding. I'm a cyclist.
Okay.
Again, my sister got me into cycling about 20 odd years ago, and we used to do the long tour cycles.
Yes.
But now I just ride with the bicycle users group.
Okay.
And I was saying to
so that's the bugs that I see around with the pink shirts on. Yes. Okay. So I go for a long walk every Saturday morning, and I see them all congregated together down there at the All Abilities Park, ready to go and do a big ride. Okay. Let me ask you a question about that England walk. So, which fascinates me. How long between when you made the decision that you're going to do the walk and then you actually did it?
So we made the decision in about the February.
Yep.
And we walked in August.
Okay. So that sounds to me like something you've made a decision about, but then for the next 6 months, it gave you something to always look forward to always be invested in. Not so much probably for you because you've got a stack of other things going on, but I wonder how important that trend remains as you go on through the journey of your life, that you're always having something to look forward to and a purpose to help drive you along.
I think it's imperative. You always need something. And look, for some people, it is the birth of the next grandchild.
Right, yes.
For other people, it is, an overseas trip, maybe a bucket list trip that, they've been looking forward to for ages. You do need to have something that, that you're looking forward to. Like, next August, this is what we...
So you would mix in very similar circles to people such as yourself. So we've talked a lot about the positives of the things to do to make sure that you are living the very best life that you can when you've gotten to a point in your life where you can probably make a lot more decisions for yourself that weren't really responsibilities perhaps in the past. What are the things that you absolutely shouldn't do? What are the things that you just have to avoid, because these could be pitfalls for you to fall off the radar, and there you may stay.
I do think that one of them is just you need to get comfortable in your own space, but not too comfortable in your own space.
Right.
I am the sort of person that if I've got a good book, I could sit for 2 days and just read. And, I need to think to myself, no, you've got things to do, get out.
Yes.
And I think, again, that's the reasons why I do involve myself in a lot of things, because I know that I've got a tendency to just sit quietly at home and read.
Sure.
So this way, there are things that I've got to get out and do.
Just think that's gold. What you've just said, I think, is gold, because to me that sounds like a trap. It sounds like a trap. If you are really comfortable in your own space, you might end up just being there all the time, and maybe it takes a bit of a self-awareness and consciousness to make sure that, okay, well, I haven't been out of the house for 3 days. Maybe I should go and do this, or I should connect with people.
Again, one of the girls I work with, when she retired, she rang me one day and she said, Kirsti, I don't know that I'm really... She said, I'm not getting out of my pajamas until I have a shower at night, and then I put a new pair of pajamas on. What am I doing wrong?
That might be okay for the first week or two. But maybe after that. So with the Neighbourhood Centre, which is, look, I take my hat off to that organisation. It is so intrinsically linked to the community, and the programs and things that they do there are so vastly important. Are there opportunities for people to volunteer with the Neighbourhood Centre?
There are lots of opportunities for people to volunteer, and again, across a range of things. So if you start with for instance, we have our comfort kitchen. So comfort kitchen, where you can come in and help prepare a meal and serve a meal, to people who might be feeling vulnerable at the moment, and they might be feeling vulnerable financially, but a lot of them are feeling vulnerable because they're socially isolated.
Yes.
And so it's an opportunity for them to come down and sit and have a meal with others. So, that's a good way to start, and it's a really basic way to do something. But, right up to, for instance, a few years ago, I took on the leadership of doing social plan, and that was a major project, and that involved a lot of time, and, there are opportunities at that level as well. So there's a range of things. But as well as that, Malcolm, we can also link you up with other organisations in town. So the Neighbourhood Centre has a volunteer base.
Yes.
And if other organisations in Hervey Bay are wanting volunteers, they'll let us know, and we can just send a message out to our volunteers saying, look, here's another opportunity for you, not necessarily in the Neighbourhood Centre, but something that's going to be supporting our community.
So if you listen to the news over the last few years, there's I would say a generalised rhetoric, largely driven, I suppose, by interest rates and all the rest of it, that the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, and people in need in the community is expanding. Are you noticing that as a trend at the Neighbourhood Centre and perhaps the Comfort Kitchen? Are you finding that people are coming that maybe a few years ago wouldn't been in that situation of needing that?
It's interesting, Malcolm, because if you go back maybe 5 or 6 years, there was a need. And then we seem to plateau, and I think COVID probably had something to do with it because people weren't going out. But we are seeing more of a need again, and I think part of that is a cost of housing for our community.
Definitely.
And we just lack the stock more than anything.
Yes.
For people. So that is an issue. But I do think too that we often look and think that the needy in our community are financially needy. And we certainly have those.
Yes.
But we have a lot of needy people in our community who are needy because they are socially isolated.
Right.
Perhaps they have other health issues that don't allow them to get out.
Do you think that social isolation, in, I suppose, talking in the context of our discussion today, as you get into the latter part of your life, is that a risk of being amplified at that period in your life?
It is. And if I, again, just drawing on personal experience, my husband passed away about 4 or 5 years ago, and I could have,
yes,
completely and utterly retreated. And the organisations that I was involved in said to me, we'll let you decide when you're ready to come back and, re-engage and everything. Now, I could have never re-engaged.
Yes.
But I, again, I think you realise that, human contact's important.
Yeah.
And how do you find it? And off you go again.
Do you think your existing relationships within those networks made it easier to re-engage?
Much easier.
Yeah, I would have thought so.
Yeah, because I could go back and things don't change a lot. In 12 months or 2 years.
Fair enough.
Sometimes the same coffee cup was sitting on the shelf.
Of course, yeah. Oh, well, look, I think we all like the basic premise of familiarity. It gives us comfort. Gives us, people want a level of certainty in their life. What does the future hold? You don't look to me like a lady who's has an appetite to be slowing down anytime soon, and you've got your finger in a lot of pies. Have you got any ambitions of your own that, there's a list there, and I'd really still like to do this and that?
I don't know that I necessarily have a list. I've always said I'm not going to have a bucket list.
Okay.
But I do think too that it's interesting because when you get to this stage in life, you have met people who've had life-changing experiences.
Uh-huh.
And when they have the life-changing experiences, they don't pull out their bucket list generally and say, right, I'm going to the North Pole, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. They usually say, I'm going to spend more time with my family.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think as time goes on, it's that family, interaction that is more important to me. And, and that's something that I focus on, which means that I'm still in the car driving backwards and forwards to Brisbane a bit to visit family.
Yeah.
Fortunately, I've got them overseas as well. So, the overseas travel has always been, of interest to me. But our walking girls are looking at maybe a national park walk in the United States at some stage.
Right. Okay.
So that'll be something.
Go when the bears are sleeping.
Exactly.
Tell me. Just go when the bears are sleeping. Look, I can assimilate with what you're saying. I've had a couple of life-changing experiences in the last few years, and I would say to you that I've come out of that, not reaching for I want to climb Mount Everest, just thinking about living a more simple life and not stressing about things I was worried about before and all the rest of it. Just the quest for happiness, I think, is the most important thing. Yeah. A part of what we're doing with these this LiveWell podcast series is that we're going to be giving money back to a local community or a charity group, sporting organisation, not-for-profit organisation, and that's no different for yourself. So tell us about the organisation that you've chosen and a reason why you think that can make some difference.
And the organisation I've chosen is the Neighbourhood Centre because I just think that the work that they do in the community and I've watched it grow, over 15 years from an organisation that had some very good and valuable projects, but we have really, expanded what we can do in the community. But in particular, the Comfort Kitchen project. And it's one that is dear to my heart. And I can remember when it was first mooted, it's actually a staff member in the Neighbourhood Centre when we were having a strategic planning day who said, I really think that we should be doing this. And it was something that resonated with everybody in the
Yes.
And so we've started from that. And so it's a program that is not supported by government funds in any way, shape or form, being that the Neighbourhood Centre, sort of does from its funds. And it's one that we're always, looking for support for. And it, one of the things I do like about it is that it deals with a whole lot of different people. So it's the people who are socially isolated, and for a while there we had a group that used to come down and they'd have their meal and then play cards afterwards. But then there's also people who, and especially in our current situation, who really, to be able to have a good hot meal that they haven't had to cook, they haven't had to they haven't had to do the washing up,
of course,
is something that they look forward to every week. And so I think that's important.
What we'll do at the end of this particular episode, we'll put all the details about the Comfort Kitchen on the slide at the end, so people who might be thinking about contributing, whether that be by a volunteer basis or financial basis, can find that. Okay, let's finish off with a couple of fun questions. What's a bit of advice you would have given to your younger self that would have made a difference in your life?
Oh, don't take yourself too
I think that applies to all of us.
And I think too, I'm of a generation where, we were taught to take ourselves serious.
I think you're right, yeah.
When you get to this stage, you realise, no.
Don't sweat the small stuff.
That's right.
I know it's Friday night and you don't want to cook. What's your go-to takeaway?
Oh, I don't have takeaway, but
Oh, true.
no, but I'll have a ham and cheese toasted sandwich.
Oh, yeah, I know. I'm one of those as well. Okay, you're down to your last $10. What do you spend it on?
A good cup.
Oh, can you get one of those? I haven't had a cup of coffee in my life, would you believe? So I don't really know the price of a cup. Never.
No, you can get a good cup. You'd probably get 2 cups of
True.
half for $10, yeah. And there are some good places in Hervey Bay. So you don't just focus on the one that becomes your favourite. You spread yourself out.
Fair enough. Okay, well, I think if I'm surmising this correctly, the underlying message from you today has been that no matter what station that you are at in life, you can make a really positive contribution to the community and as a result to yourself. And I think that you are doing amazing work and helping so many people as that filters down through all the tentacles of all the organisations that you are involved in. So I would say to you, Kirsti, you're an amazing lady and well done for everything that you're doing.
Thank you very much. And thanks for the opportunity. That's great. Yeah.